Good morning. I'm audible, I'm visible. Good morning. Okay. 10 to 1, 2 to 5, 5:30 to 8. Good morning, good morning. A, B, C, lunch break 1 to 2, 5 to 5:30, one more break. Important thing, we'll be covering in this section Delhi Sultanate and Mughal India and Delhi Sultanate. In this part, we should be able to transition to paintings. And by the end of the day, we should be able to do sculpture. Today, we should be able to, and that is based on our basic pace, we should be able to cover the big four, which is sculpture, painting, architecture, within architecture, medieval, and ancient. Ancient already covered. We have, since the beginning of art and culture, covered ancient and early medieval is done. Today, we will do medieval and modern, and our work for architecture should be over. And in a way, your first chapter of Nitin Singhania, once sculpture is done, will be over. Painting, important section. 1 to 2 question standards do come. It will be a more visual journey. I'll tell you what to do with it. But as I said, big four should be over by today. Thereafter, next week we have again Saturday and Sunday. That is the last week end with me. On tomorrow, which is Monday, I will see you in the evening batch if you're doing world history. If not, I'll see you next Saturday, Sunday. Next Saturday, Sunday, our agenda is very straightforward. On Saturday, we'll cover 3 very big topics again: dance, music, and puppetry, along with theatre, martial arts. Sunday, we will cover the smaller topics, multiple smaller topics, basically covering festivals, the smaller topics such as cultural institutions, UNESCO World Heritage Sites, both tangible, intangible. We will discuss the numismatics issue, we'll discuss the schools of philosophy, we will discuss smaller topics such as awards. And by next Sunday evening, we'll be doing in part C certain current affairs, which used to be current affairs, now have become static. So one of them, Seat and Mansell caves, did come in the 2023 paper. So that becomes current affairs. Everything else now becomes static. For example, what is the UNESCO, what we call as nomination for this year? Janikeshwara and Musleshwara temple, along with the Charuba Madams. We will discuss that. The simple point is, now once we cover till 5, we should be over with the big topics, which are mains-oriented topics. And thereafter, we will shift away from the mains-oriented topics to other prelims-oriented topics, which are more factual, more straightforward in that. So we'll talk about it. Vimal, who are you talking to? I didn't even say anything. You're just writing yourself. India or Bharat, India should be retained while making a law not to name a political party. India already has its name as Bharat. Read the constitution. India, which is Bharat, and Bharat Athwa India. We already have both the names. Who's changing the name? The rhetoric is that they're changing the name. Our constitution says the name is India and Bharat. And the Hindi constitution says that it is Bharat and India. So what is the emotional outburst which is coming here? I don't get it. Whatever be the rhetoric which the media may be creating, it is already stated in Article 1. So what is the issue? They have all the right to use the word Bharat. They have all the right to use the word India. Both are India and Bharat are quoted in the constitution. So nobody's changing the name. The name already is there. Firstly, I don't know, I'm talking about Delhi Sultanate and you're talking about India, Bharat, but I'm telling you this, we've already told you that there's no sides to be taken here. We already have both names in our constitution. Okay, I'll give it 1 more minute. Requisite number is here, then we'll start. Anybody has any issue, they can ask me questions. I'm enabling the call feature also if you want to call, sure, why not? And we can wait for 1 more minute and then we can start. We've already covered temple architecture, we've covered stupas, caves, Mauryan pillars, and Indus Valley civilization. Delhi Sultanate and Mughal India is much more straightforward but much more visual, so we'll discuss what they are. Good morning. Still, it's 7 minutes, but still joining in. Okay. Now, the topic which we are covering right now is called Indo-Islamic culture. One thing very, very important, the word Indo is equally important as Islamic. And because you have to write an answer, which is you have to write a names answer, to make sure that you do not qualify, never write Islamic culture. This terminology is totally wrong. This terminology is 150% wrong. The examiner will expect Indo-Islamic because the architecture of Delhi Sultanate, be it the Lodhis and be it the Mughals, all of them have very heavy indigenous influence, meaning they are more Indo than Islamic. This point I'm starting right now itself and quoting it right now itself because you need to know that. Second is the fact that you cannot use the word, for example, in ancient you're writing in conclusion we, and in medieval you are writing they. This is equally our culture. This is equally part of the Indian society, culture, and everything what you do today is a product of these 3 dynasties. So do not other. Whenever you give a conclusion, you have to be very categorically be clear that you're writing this is our. The word is going to be our or we, which is that we are part of this culture in that regard. So this is a disclaimer and a warning for anybody who does not want to lose the marks by writing in a certain way. For example, Mauryan architecture, you're writing a totally different type of answer. And for Indo-Islamic or for example, Delhi Sultanate architecture, and this time they ask a question on Delhi Sultanate technology, if you will write in third person or in an othering fashion, then it sends a certain type of message to the examiner which they will not like itself. And the word Indo-Islamic should be etched and should be used irrespective of anything. So if we understand the implication of this word and the importance of this word, and the fact that it is equally Indo-Indian than Islamic, which is that it's a mixture of Turkish plus Indian architecture, then we can talk about Delhi Sultanate. We've already covered temple architecture. Can we talk about Delhi Sultanate? And basically what is called Indo-Islamic architecture. Yes? Yes, no, I have to say something. First 11 minutes of the class. I have to go until 8. Okay. Now, when we talk about Delhi Sultanate, one of the major contributions of the Delhi Sultans we already know was the fact that they protected Indian subcontinent from the Mongols. But with them, they brought in Turkish technology and understanding. And basically, they have 3 to 4 different phases of development in the Delhi sector or in the northern sector. In the first stage, which is mostly only Kutubuddin Aibak, which is the first part of his rule, it is called the reuse phase or rebuilding phase, which is that in this phase, Kutubuddin, because there's a proportionality between monumentality, which is how you create monuments, and political stability. While Kutubuddin Aibak was dealing with Yalduz, he did not have the time to develop new complexes in that regard. And therefore, what he did was he produced 2 very important buildings. The name of these buildings are important, and the chronology is also important because this comes in the examination from time to time. He created 2 very important structures. One is called the Adhai Din Ka Jhopra, and the second one is called the Kuwait ul Islam Mosque, which is in Mehrauli, Delhi, and this is in Ajmer. Now, what is the distinction, or what's a very important concept of these two is that these two were not created by but reused by Kutubuddin Aibak. This was a Jain monastery which was converted into a mosque, and this was a temple next to the famous Chandragupta II Vikramaditya iron pillar. So the iron pillar of Vikramaditya had what we call as discarded, a very old temple which was not used, and these two were nothing but just makeshift arrangements for what we call as the reuse phase. So if I show you these two structures, this is Adhai Din Ka Jhopra, and this is Kuwait ul Islam Mosque. And you can see from the Kuwait ul Islam Mosque itself that the pillars are testament to the fact that it was a temple which was not used. And in the courtyard of this temple was the iron pillar installed by Chandragupta Vikramaditya, and the iron pillar never rusts, and therefore he found it very fascinating that way. Both are part of stage 1, and very simply do not have any architectural merit in the beginning itself. So there's no contribution, it's just reusing them without any major alterations. So when we talk about stage 1, it is very simply a period where there's too much political instability, so they cannot deal with it, so therefore they just use whatever they find. It is from stage 2 that things start to become interesting. Stage 2 is when the Qutub complex starts to get developed, and whilst Kutubuddin Aibak saw that an iron pillar can be a memorial or a form of expression of power, he now wanted to build a pillar which represented a new phase in Indian history, that is the formation of the Delhi Sultanate itself, and he will lay the foundation of the Qutub Minar. The Qutub Minar foundation will be by Aibak, and Qutub Minar has a very interesting history, wherein foundation was by Aibak, finished by Iltutmish, and then because it was a very big pillar, it's a very big tower, it was hit by lightning, and it was then rebuilt and renovated by Firoz Shah Tughlaq. And that is why if you ever been to Qutub Minar, or if you will ever go to Qutub Minar has 5 parts. 1, 2, 3, then it starts to taper 4, and a smaller part. First 3 are actually made out of sandstone, because that is the original structure. Last 2 are actually marble. You have red sandstone and you have marble. 1 second. Okay. So one is the rebuilding phase, and the second one is the what we call as renovating phase. See, this I will show it to you also. This part is the original part. This was added by Firoz Shah Tughlaq because it was hit by lightning. We'll come to it, but I'm trying to give you a basic picture here. So very simply, stage 2 is inaugurated by Aibak's attempt to now replicate with the coming of political stability. He wanted to now express himself in monuments. So first things first, stage 1 is rebuilding phase. And in the examination, if Adhai Din Ka Jhopra and Kuwait ul Islam Mosque are written, this is first, this is second chronologically also, because it's moving from Ajmer to Delhi, and therefore reuse phase should not be a problem for anybody. Now comes stage 2, wherein they start to develop Qutub complex, start to express themselves, express in architecture. If we do understand the difference between first and second phase, I want to now further go into second phase and show what it actually meant to have the Delhi Sultanate and its contribution to architecture. Till this point, are we clear with regards to the first phase and how things are developing, and the correlation between political stability and the concept of, yes, very good, political stability and monumentality are linked to each other. Now, it is in stage 2 that the Delhi Sultanate contribute, or the Delhi Sultans introduce 3 very important technologies. 3 very, very important technologies. The first one is called true arch. The second one is called true dome. And the third one is called limestone mortar. Limestone mortar. Mortar is nothing but glue. Is glue if you want to call it like type of cement. But the first two are revolutionary technologies when it comes to architecture. I'll tell you how. See, previously, any structure which was made in the Indian subcontinent, more or less, was made in this fashion. This is called tri-bitted structure, wherein you have a roof or beam and you have a column or pillar. You would have seen it for sure in your life. You would have seen a very good example of this is this only. This is called a tri-bitted structure. The roof is held by multiple pillars. So what is taking the weight of the roof? What is distributing the weight of the roof? Weight of the roof. Now you have to talk about like how architects talk. What is the device or what is the structure which is taking the weight of the roof? Very good. Pillars. Pillars are load bearing. Pillars are load bearing. So if I have to make a very big pavilion, with a very big pavilion, it would have to have multiple pillars so that it can take its weight, and not even in the corners because it is a flat roof. You need pillars in the middle also. So very simply, what you will get is a room filled of multiple pillars. This is called tri-bitted structures. This was very common in ancient and early medieval. But in Turkey, in the Central Asian sector, mosques are very big structures in which people have to congregate. And if pillars are taking up space, it is not very effective. So they developed two types of architectural devices, one called an arch and second one called a dome, which allows for two things: very lofty ceiling and very open rooms. Now, this is a dome from the inside. This is the iconic blue Turkish dome. And this is an arch. This is an arch. I'll tell you why they are significant. If you combine both of them together, you get rooms which basically don't need pillars. They can use that arch in such a way that the weight is distributed in such a way that the need for central beam or central pillars is not needed only. Now you will say, sir, was it that arch and dome? Arch is something like this. And the second one being a dome. And this is hollow. It's a hollow dome. Now the point is, were they known in India? Or was it that this was a truly new concept which was developed in India? The answer to this question is that arch and dome were known in India, but they did not know how to make it in the right scientific technique. For example, they used to make domes, but very shallow domes were made. They used to make arches, but what they used to do was that they used to have two pillars together, one beam, and then stick two stones here. Now this basically is not a true arch. That is why I've used the word true arch. What I mean to say is domes and arches were known in the Indian subcontinent. Please pay attention to this concept. However, the correct technique wasn't used. And therefore, the problem was arches were not truly arches and domes were very shallow. So very simply, the Delhi Sultans with them bring in the technology related to what we call as true arch, true dome, and that allows for very, 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 very open and non-tri-bitted. And the word which is used for non-tri-bitted is accurate structures. And this will revolutionize how we make buildings in the Indian subcontinent. This is what the examiner was expecting in yesterday's GS paper 1 question. It asked you a question, right? Discuss the technological development in the Delhi Sultanate period. This is the technological development in the Delhi Sultanate period. True arch, true dome. And if somebody is an architect in the class, they would also know something called squinches. You would have seen a squinch for sure in your life, but you don't know it's called a squinch. When you go to a very old, very old Mughal or Delhi Sultanate building, you will find something like this in the corner. In the corner, you find a device like this, and there will be certain ribbing on it. This is called a squinch. Squinch plus arch plus dome is equal to a very stable and open building. So how they used to do it was that very simply, they used to make a very big roof with a very big dome. Then in the corners, they used to install squinches and then bring the load down. In such a way that now they will make an arch here, they'll make an arch here, they'll make an arch here, they'll make an arch here. And now the building very simply does not need a single pillar. The need for the pillar is gone now. Because of the way they have very simply divided the load-bearing structure. So from this point, I can look at the top of the dome and I can go out from any of the edges. And very simply, for people to congregate, this is a very, very, very open, lofty room. This is not possible if you don't have true arch plus true dome and a squinch. This is only possible if you have these three and in the right, correct combination. Now, nobody's asked me to this point, what does a dome represent or why is it that domes are very, very important? And basically, Domes represent the sky. If you look at an open space in a desert, the whole earth, the atmosphere looks like a dome. So if you look towards a dome, it looks like that it's the sky. It gives a very lofty room. In a room which you are in right now, it most probably has a flat roof. Flat roofs don't give airy feeling. So what they wanted to represent was the sky itself. So the second phase introduces in India the correct technique of making arches and domes, but all of it is only possible if you have a lightweight glue or mortar. If your cement is very, very heavy, then your building becomes heavy. So the third contribution is in a way the most important, because all of these structures are only possible if you have a proper type of mortar. Mortar, as I said, is like cement, but it is limestone, chuna. What is done is that the chuna or limestone is mixed with gypsum in such a way that it is very light but very strong. Because if you realize, or if you haven't realized, this whole part of the dome is freestanding. The weight of this dome is on the dome itself. So this can fall if you don't have the correct combination and the right limestone mortar. So in itself, this is an engineering marvel, because we did know it, but we did not know it in the right combination. So the second phase, the first three contributions of the Delhi Sultans is 2 arch, 2 dome, limestone mortar. Is it making sense? Is it making sense? Because then I talk about the fourth most important contribution. Is this making sense? What do you mean by 2 arch, 2 dome? What is limestone mortar? This can be asked as a standard question. In the end, I will consolidate for you. Anybody has any issue? No issue. Okay. Now, the fourth contribution is called decorative technique. Decorative techniques. Now, there's a problem. Tell me one thing. When temples were decorated or ornamented, what were they ornamented with? What were they ornamented with? If you look at the decoration of a temple, if you look at the carvings on the temple, what type of images do you see? What type of images do you see? Images of gods, demigods, women, men. You would have seen flowers. You would have seen certain types of Mithun, goddess Yamuna Ganga. You would have seen Yaksha Yakshi. You would have seen Naga Nagi, flora, fauna, mythical creatures. But what is common to them is that mostly either they are in flora fauna form, which is animal form or plant form, or they would be in human form, meaning they would be given a human form. Yes or no? They would be given a human form, or they would be given a flora and fauna form. This is the standard thing. Or can we all agree that if you go to the temple, the carvings on the pillars and everything is mostly human-like? We can agree to that? Yes. But now there's a problem within Islam. And the problem is that in Islam, you cannot represent what God has made. Human form, true flora and true fauna form is not allowed. The argument is that what Allah has created, you are nobody to recreate that. So in Islamic architecture and in Islamic buildings, you will never find human forms or animal forms, because it is believed that very simply, it is un-Islamic to represent something which God made. So the issue for a what we call as architect in Islam is, or Indo-Islamic architecture is, it is un-Islamic to represent human, animal, and true plant form. So now they needed to find a way to decorate the building, but not go with human form, animal form, and plant form. So the first thing which they did was that they introduced what is called Kufi. What do you mean by Kufi? Kufi is very simply, Quranic verses written in calligraphic form. Second is that they used geometrical patterns. And these geometrical patterns, it's got geometrical patterns. These geometrical patterns are used to decorate. But the master stroke of what made this architecture Indian was that the architect said that, okay, I can't use any Islamic imagery. So Hindu images and symbols, motifs as they're called, were used. For example, lotus, etc. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is, okay, I can't use Islamic motif. So Hindu motif is un-Islamic. I use that. So what we get is this extremely intricate decorative pattern with no human form, but has a mixture of what we call as geometrical, Kufi, and Hindu motifs. And this decorative technique is together called arabesque. The point was, you see here, this is Kufi. Quranic verses, Arabic script itself used as a decorative pattern. You can see here also. But geometrical patterns are also used. And this type of imagery we have seen previously, which is Hindu motifs. Much like how politically, economically, they were equally a part of the Indian subcontinent. The Delhi Sultan said, okay, if I cannot represent anything which is Islamic, I'll use Hindu motifs. And herein comes the amalgamation of cultures. that Islamic architecture, a truly Islamic architecture, becomes Indo-Islamic. Because what they did was they were always open to incorporating indigenous elements in order to firstly be relevant, but also make sure that they can make beautiful decorations and concepts in the Indian subcontinent. Understand this point. It's a very interesting point, very important point, and that is why you have to argue it in that sense. Arabesque is the answer, is the concept wherein the geometrical patterns are used with Hindu motifs plus Kufi to make truly an Indo-Islamic decoration. Indo-Islamic decoration. Makes sense? Are you getting my point? The four things which were introduced in India, there were four very important things. First, you have the true arch true dome and limestone mortar. These are three technologies which they brought with themselves. But now the problem is you make a very big building, but you cannot ornament it. You cannot make certain types of human forms or any form of animal or even floral forms. So what they do is that they say, okay, let's write the Quran in a very beautiful way. That is one decorative pattern. Let's do one more thing, which is that let's use geometrical patterns. But the Delhi Sultan said that in Islam, we cannot use Islamic motifs. But Hinduism is a different religion altogether. So Hinduism, can't we use Hindu motifs or designs? And then a Maulvi and an ulama cannot say that you are an Islamic. I'm using a pattern which is not there in Islam itself. The master stroke of the architect, the fact that our masons, our mistris, our Raj mistris already knew how to make Hindu motifs. They integrated Hindu motifs into their Turkish designs in order to create a truly Indo-Islamic architecture in India. This is the argument I'm trying to make. The point is in the world, be it Delhi Sultanate, be it Lodi, be it Mughal, you will never find India, the Indo-Islamic architecture anywhere else. Nowhere else you will ever find this type of architecture, because everywhere else they were bound by their own culture. In India, what they did was they brought in indigenous elements and created a beautiful amalgamation we call as Indo-Islamic architecture. Is it making sense? I have to be more clear. Yes? Can you hear that? Are you able to hear that? Mayuri is saying yes. You can able to hear that, right? Okay. One second. A little bit of the mic will show, but I'm bringing it down. A little bit. Very light as I'm bringing the mic down so that it does not pick that up. Okay. Now am I more clear? I should be more clear because now the mic is here. A little bit up. Yes? So if you feel that it's too much, somebody is dealing on the floor above us, I've already told them not to do that. But if it becomes very heavy, tell me. I'll bring the mic even down. That is not an issue. Right? So I want a feedback in that regard. So okay, now we have discussed, is arabesque making sense to you? Because arabesque is an example of, or why we call in Delhi Sultanate architecture not Islamic architecture but Indo-Islamic architecture. We call it Indo-Islamic architecture because they were extremely open to taking different types of what we call as Hindu and different types of other elements which were there in temples and make them part of the decorative pattern. They need to decorate, but how do they decorate is only when they have to find new elements. This is I'm emphasizing on this point because if you understand this point, you will understand the point of Indo-Islamic architecture. I've used this word Indo-Islamic because it's an amalgamation. Together, they represent a truly unique building which you will not find anywhere else. And that is why you would have realized, and if you've ever thought about it, out of all the structures which are there in the world, why is that Taj Mahal is one of the 7 wonders of the world? Islamic architecture prevails from the tip of the Indian subcontinent till Iraq, Iran, and the Ottoman sector till Turkey. But whilst they don't have anything, why is that a building in India is called a wonder of the world? It's called that because Taj Mahal, which is the last thing we do in Mughal architecture, is like a culmination of this syncretic culture. It's a cultural amalgamation of whatever we call Indian. See, India is a melting pot. India is unity in diversity. The strength of India is its diversity. The fact that we are not one culture, we are multiple cultures, and still we are one country and going to become a superpower in the process of becoming a superpower is our strength. People will argue that that is not our strength, but that is our strength. Our strength is that from our north to south, east to west, we have everything, every culture, every different form of language, and every different form of cultural expression. Now, when we talk about Taj Mahal, in a way, it's a very good metaphor for the medieval period. The British would argue that Islam and Hinduism, Hindus and Muslims, are naturally antagonistic. When you will do modern India with me, I will teach you communalism. And when I teach you communalism, the first word I will say to you is engineered hatred, which is that the animosity, the conflict between Hindus and Muslims in India is something which was engineered by the British, taught by the British to us, that see, the interest of a Hindu and the interest of a Muslim is different. Can anybody tell me an example of how these two things are separated to each other? The interest of a Hindu and the interest of a Sikh, the interest of a Muslim, the interest of a Jew, the interest of a Buddhist, as interest. What is the device which was used by the British to do it? Very good. Yeah, very good. Perfect. It is separate electorates. The concept of separate electorates is based on the concept that interests are separate, are different. The British taught us that, okay, Bengal, East and West make sense. Only when these two religions are separate to each other, they make sense. But from ancient India till the rise of the British in India, Indian history only tells us one thing, which is that India has always had conflict. India, it is part and parcel to have conflict. But India is an example of tolerance. And in a way, Indo-Islamic architecture, Indo-Islamic culture is a testimony to the fact that the tolerance which was showed by, for example, Vakataka king Harisena to build a Buddhist temple was exhibited by Delhi sultans, by Lodi sultans, by Mughal emperors, where they never hesitated to incorporate anything which was Hindu or anything which was indigenous. And what makes this culture unique and distinct to Central Asian culture is the fact all rulers in India knew that the only way to move forward was to amalgamate, was to assimilate, was to bring everybody together. It may sound like a speech, but this is what history is testament to. And this is why UPSC wants you to study culture. Why is that UPSC wants you to understand art and culture? Because what you will learn from art and culture is that India, there is no one culture and everything is just one mushmash of a lot of different things. And to have the tolerance, to have the courage, and to have the orientation to incorporate someone else's culture, that is what makes us Indian. Indian, what we are as citizens of India, is tolerance. Somehow we're forgetting it. We still have that British hangover. The British taught us communalism. We still remember it somehow. But this is what the contribution of Delhi Sultans is. They are the ones who pioneered Indo-Islamic amalgamated culture. Is this making sense? Are you now able to find something meaningful in this discussion? Because this is not just for history. You can use this in essay. You can use this in social issues. You can use this in any polity question. That what India is testament to is tolerance only. And the point of the matter is Indo-Islamic architecture is a testament to that only. So in the first phase, we have reuse. But in the second phase, we have true arch, true dome, limestone mortar, and arabesque. Anybody has any issue till this point? Because then what I want to do is I want to give you all the phases together and how we will discuss. These are the four major contributions of the Delhi Sultans, which is decorative technique, true arch, true dome, and arabesque, and limestone mortar. Tughlaqs added something more which we will discuss when we will reach phase 4. Anybody has any issue, you agree or disagree with me, I would like to also have that conversation. If you agree or disagree, that's not the point. But if you have a point to add or subtract, please do feel free to write that. I'll be happy to discuss it here, not an issue. Okay. How my limestone mortar is used. Limestone mortar, very simple, straightforward. Gypsum and chuna is mixed. Limestone is mixed. It becomes a paste. That paste is used to bring these things together. Samishta, see, temples were erected with a different type of mortar. Gypsum mortar. It was heavy mortar, and that is why pillars were needed quite a lot. It's not that mortar was never known in India, and you would have seen for sure if you go to a very rural sector. If you go to a very rural sector, I know that. I can hear it first. If you go to a rural sector, you would have seen. There's no sound problem. I know that the sound is there. I just hope that he needs one more drill. That's it. Okay. If you go to rural India, you would have seen that not every building uses cement. Have you seen a house which is built out of making bricks stick together with sand or what you call as mud? Terracotta is used to actually bring two bricks together. You would have seen it for sure. There are two types of in India. If you go to rural India, not everybody uses cement. Not everybody uses cement. They only use what is called balu, mix it up with a certain type of mixture, terracotta, and then bring it together. These are very fragile buildings, but are also away. The point, Samishta, is that the fact that India mortar was there, but it doesn't mean that mortar was durable enough. It was durable enough to actually bring 2 to 3 things together. I'll take 1 minute of yours. I'll just go and report this to the team. Give me 1 second. I'm not going anywhere. Give me 5 minutes. Take a break. 5 minutes. I'll figure this out. I'll be back at 11:20 because I don't want this type of students will take a students will take a 10-minute break. We need 10 minutes to figure this out. So it is 11:07. I'll be back by 11:20. You take a break because there's no point making you wait. You have your breakfast or something. I'll be back at 11:20 because I don't want this type of disturbance in between class. Acceptable? Yes? I'll not give you a break after this. I'm extremely sorry for this. Totally unexpected. I brought the boom mic down also, but it's not working. We'll get this sorted. Extremely sorry. Extremely sorry. there's no sound also. Okay, I'm audible, I'm visible, yes. You can see me, there's no issue with regards to that. And now there's no sound also. Can you confirm that? No issue at all, sir. Great. So I'm thankful for your patience. I just changed the studio only. I'm in a different studio altogether on a different floor. So that took time. I'm sorry. Happened sometime, not in our control. So what we've discussed till this point is this. I'll recap everything. We started our discussion with the contribution of the Delhi Sultans. We discussed the concept of what we call as Indo-Islamic, how this phase is called Indo-Islamic. We discussed stage 1, which is reuse phase, Alauddin Shah Chopra and Kuwaitul Islam. Thereafter, we discussed stage 2, in which very simply the Qutub complex was starting to develop, and that in turn meant that we have a new phase of architecture developing in India. Now, in stage 2, 4 things were contributed by them. First, to arch. Second, to dome, limestone mortar, and arabesque. To arch, to dome is very, very important because it allows for something which was not possible previously. From a tributed structure, we were able to move to an accurate structure because the arch and dome allow for better distribution of what we call as, better distribution of the weight, and therefore it allows for a better understanding of open buildings in that regard. Arch and dome were known in India, but not the right technique. Limestone mortar is what makes it possible to have an arch, dome, and squinch structure. So you can see here, arch, dome, and squinches together are very, very important to produce buildings such as this. And the most important thing which made this truly Indo-Islamic was the fact that arabesque was a mixture of geometrical patterns, Kufi, but also Hindu motifs. So they started to pick up on decorative patterns which were there in the temples, and that made it very, very easy for them to manage how they would be able to decorate their buildings. I made basic 4 points. It's been a while. I know we've been doing this for the past half an hour or so. Does anybody have any issue till this point? If not, then I will discuss the buildings through images. That is always what I do. Try to give you a better picture of that. Anybody has any issue? I'm extremely thankful for your patience. Sometimes happens, but now we should not have a problem on this studio, in this studio in that regard. No issue. Okay. Now, we discussed stage 1. Then we discussed stage 2. Stage 1 was very simply the stage in which they were reusing. In stage 2, they moved beyond reusing and they started to introduce true arch, true dome, mortar, limestone, mortar, plus arabesque. By stage 3, these technologies mature, and by stage 4, now under the Tughlaqs, something very interesting happens, which is that the Tughlaqs go a step further, and and by stage 4, the Tughlaqs, this is Khiljis, this is Mamluks, this is Aibak. The Tughlaqs take it a step further. These buildings with domes were started to build from up or from bottom. Nitin, how will you make a building from top to bottom? You will make it from bottom to top, right? Are you getting my point? If there's a dome like this, it will be, how can it be made from this point down? It will be made like this, huh? Okay. That is going against gravity. That much technology they don't have, we also don't have. Buildings today are constructed from top to bottom, bottom to top. They don't make the dome first. Obviously, that can't be possible. You have to create a certain base on which the dome is going to be there. Bottom to top, yes. So the way we make it today, that the way they also used to make it. Now, Tughlaqs will add new technology. These are called sloping walls. I will discuss what it means. Sloping walls, marble dome, platforms, and beam lintel. But if I have to divide them according to buildings, this is Alauddin Shah Chopra, Kuwait ul Islam Mosque. This is Qutub complex. This is a Siri city and Alai Darwaza. And this is Tughlaqabad, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq tomb, and thereafter plus tombs of Tughlaq. And last phase, which is considered a declining phase, is Firoz Shah Kotla. Firoz Shah Kotla. Now, very simple, straightforward. Stage 1, reuse. Stage 2, major technologies. Stage 3, there is the first scientific arch which will develop in India. Stage 4 is Tughlaqs. Within stage 4, the highest point of architecture will be there, and then they will go down a notch, and then by the time Firoz Shah Tughlaq comes through, the architecture shows that there is decline. So let's do one thing. I've been talking about a lot of things. For example, two arch, two dome, limestone mortar, arabesque. Are you able to create a certain picture in your mind that how there's an evolution? If you can, then I will show it through images, how it actually worked and how it actually was. I've discussed if there's a question, and I'll give you a consolidated profile. What beam lintel I will tell you, don't worry, that I have to teach you. Stage 3, stage 4 I have to show you. Stage 1 and 2 I've already talked about. I want to now discuss the buildings and then come back and give you a summary. Are we in a position to have a certain type of understanding of how things are developing? We started with the discussion of Indo-Islamic, then we discussed reuse phase, now we've discussed stage 2. Now I have to discuss stage 3 and 4 with you, but that I will do through buildings. So let's do one thing, let's consolidate what we've done. I will give you a summary in the end. So when we talk about phase 1, it is the period in which Qutbuddin Aibak converted temples and existing buildings into mosques. While he was destroying some, he was also reconstructing some, he was reviving some. Two examples, Kuwait ul Islam Mosque in the Qutub Minar complex and Alauddin Shah Chopra in Ajmer are the two buildings which are very important in this structure. And decoration patterns, there is no human and animal motive because we already know that is un-Islamic, and therefore they used to use the verses of Quran as a form of decoration. Now, what is the basic contribution which comes to in phase 2? It is the introduction of true arch and true dome. This is the first one. Arches and domes were previously known, but not used at a large scale or without the correct scientific method itself. What is the importance of true arch, true dome? It gives a pleasing skyline. When you look towards the building, it looks very beautiful. Over and above that, domes can become lofty and impressive. And more than that, construction of large halls and pillars are possible, which gives you a very open room in that regard. Because of their technology, open rooms were possible. Now, The fact is that by just introducing two arch, two dome, not all buildings became accurate, or not all buildings were ceased to be pivoted. Turkish rulers used both dome and arch, and both what is called slab and beam structure. This is a column, this is a beam. Beam is what you can see in your house also right now. These are load-bearing heavy pillars which are vertically put in or are horizontally put over a pillar. So when you see, this is a pillar and this is a beam. Beams are always used to take the load. So when you go for linter, which is called lintering of a house, you actually are putting your load-bearing beams in that. Now, Turkish sultans also introduced light mortar, which allowed for new architectural forms, and this was a very important contribution of the Turkish sultans coming to Delhi itself. Now, in the area of decoration, they could not use animal or human form itself, and therefore they used geometrical floral designs combining inscriptions and the verses of the Quran to create an artwork. So Arabic language itself became an artwork. They also were developing arabesque, which was a combination of this with Hindu motifs. They freely borrowed from Hindu motifs such as the bell motif, the swastika, the lotus, and therefore they decorated freely with these images because as it is outside Islam, so it was allowed. And last but not the least is they used yellow and red sandstone in combinations to create very big patterns. The word arabesque should be in your mind because this you can see in the examination if they ask you a question. Now let's talk about phase 2. See, this is the plan of Kuwaitul Islam, of the Qutub complex. We have the iconic iron pillar of Chandragupta Vikramaditya. This is the Kuwaitul Islam Mosque, which automatically looks like a temple itself. But there are 3 to 4 major additions in this whole complex, which are very, very important and representative of what was happening in architecture. You have the Qutub Minar, the first one. Thereafter, you have 2 very important. This is called Iltutmish Tomb, and this is called Alai Darwaza. While this is stage 2 and stage 2, this is stage 1. This represents stage 3. This is called the Alai Darwaza. This is Iltutmish Tomb. There's also one more structure which is called Alai Minar. This was an attempt by Alauddin Khilji to make a Minar double the size of the Qutub Minar, but he laid the foundation. After that, he did not have the money to do it, so therefore he gave up on this. But this building, this whole structure itself has all the phases here. You have stage 1 in the form of the Kuwaitul Islam Mosque, stage 2 in the form of the Qutub Minar and the Iltutmish Tomb, and then stage 3 in the form of Alai Darwaza. Now, why is that the Qutub Minar is considered so important? Firstly, without any form of excavators, cranes, or any form of other what we call as modern technology, a 71.4 meter high Minar was made at this point of time in the period of 13th century. But the most interesting thing about, and a very interesting feature about Qutub Minar is that now you can't go to these balconies. These are 1, 2, 3, 4 balconies are there because people started to misuse the balconies itself. But the point was that if you stand at the bottom here, the way the balconies have been made is that you can see to the top without obstruction of vision. They made it in such a ribbed way. From this point, I can see this point. This is an engineering marvel in itself because none of the balconies stop the view of the top itself, which is very interesting. They have been made in such a way that they open up slowly or rather contract slowly so that somebody can see from the bottom, the top also. And as I said, it is a very important minar because it has firstly red sandstone, yellow sandstone, which is going to become a staple for the Delhi Sultans itself and later the Mughals also. Certain amount of marble work also. It is using arabesque. And more than that, it was the first time that they were using limestone mortar. And this showed that this building was very durable and is still standing in that regard. Now, the second stage, stage 2, in a way zenith or highest point, is in Iltutmish tomb. See, in Iltutmish's tomb, we can see multiple things coming together. First, you can see the arch. You can see how beautifully it is made. You can see the squinch. Further, the distinction about Iltutmish's tomb is every inch of the Iltutmish tomb is covered by arabesque. They have not left even 1 centimeter of space, which shows the maturity in decorative pattern. See, I'm trying to be visual here because I want you to understand it through images. That way, it will keep a certain type of memory in your mind. You can see that Quran is here. But tell me what this is. These two. What are these two? What are these two? Very good. This is lotus. This is a truly Hindu symbol. Truly Hindu symbol. Further, if you look more closely, this patterning, all of this was used in temples. So you have geometrical patterns, Hindu motifs, and the concept of Kufi coming together in this tomb itself. Now, obviously, what you will argue is that Iltutmish's tomb in a way shows how our indigenous masons, see, understand one thing, and I'll ask you a very simple question. When the Mamluk Sultans or Qutbuddin Aibak or Iltutmish, they migrated to the Indian sector, invaded Indian sector, whatever you want to say, are the masons, Rajmistri as they call them, are the labor, is the karigar, is the craftsman also Turkish? No. This has been created by an indigenous Hindu labor, meaning they brought in technology with them, and our craftsmen, our artisans, our masons, our mistris were so good at what they were doing that they were able to understand the technology and then create something like this. Imagine the time, the effort which would have gone in making something like this. If I ask you to make notes, you feel that how do I make notes? This could take years to make. Appreciate the effort, appreciate the technology, and understand the effort, and then you will realize how important this technology is. And stage 2, this is the high point. Iltutmish's tomb shows a certain type of maturity. But when you reach phase 3, which is Khilji's, now arches could be 10, 15, 20 meter high. And unfortunately, Alauddin Khilji built a city called Siri. You have Siri Fort today, but Siri, however, does not survive. So we only have a mosque and a wall which is there around which the whole horse khas area has been made. But Iltutmish, rather Alauddin Khilji, made what is called the Alai Darwaza. Alai Darwaza is called the culmination of the concept of arch, dome, squinch, and arabesque. The dome on this is first scientifically correct dome of Delhi Sultanate. And as you can see, the arches are now becoming taller and taller and taller, and the squinches are becoming more elaborate, more and more elaborate. So very simply, this is a squinch. Very simply, add it to. Have you ever seen this type of what we call as nakashi anywhere? Have you seen this type of nakashi anywhere previously? Where have you seen it? Very good. This is called Rajasthani Gujarati Jali work. Today, this will not be like this, but will actually be see-through. And very simply, Rajasthani Gujarati Jali work will become very common at this point of time. But Mughals are the ones who actually take it a step further. So I'll not call it Jali work, but rather I'll call it Rajasthani Gujarati design. So the more Alauddin Khilji traveled, the more ideas he got about, or his architects got about what we call as designs and concepts itself. So Alai Darwaza is truly stage 3 because it is a culmination of that whole process in that regard. Now, very simply, till this point, we've reached a maturity of whatever started at stage 2. Anybody has any issue? Squinch, meaning, elaborate means that it has become more and more, the design has changed. It has become more and more stylistic in that regard. Anybody has any issue till this point with regards to how it is actually working? Come on, tell me. Stage 2 once again. Okay, I'll give you a summary of that, don't worry. So regional styles were also incorporated during Khilji time. Thus, yes, Samita, in a way, there is a difference. The difference, see, let me then consolidate, because see, stage 1 is reuse. Stage 2 is what we call as arch, dome, mortar, and arabesque. Now, they start to develop. Hardik, I'll tell you that, don't worry. They start to develop in this period. This peaks by the time we come to Iltutmish II. When I mean that it has become mature, I mean that it has reached a certain point where everybody knows how to make it. However, arch dome are still in their nascent form. So in stage 3, arch dome and mortar reach its maturity in Alai Darwaza. So you have Iltutmish's tomb as maturity, and stage 3 is maturity of the concept of arch dome and mortar. Stage 4 is going to be totally different. They will add new concepts. The point is, what started during the period of 1210s, by 1300 it was getting consolidated. That is the basic point I'm trying to make here. That stage 3 is the maturity of what was started in stage 2. Right? What is a squinch? See, squinches, it's a very specific architectural term. What happens is, when you make a corner, because there is no pillar, squinch are load bearing. This is called a squinch. If you can see, this is a squinch. So what squinches do is that they take the load from the right hand and the left hand side and then bring it down in a more systematic way. This allows for not to have pillars in the building. Squinches are very important in that way. Squinches are very important because squinch arch dome together make it. Every corner, this will have a squinch, this will have a squinch, this will have a squinch on the other side. All 4 corners, it's a load bearing device in that regard. So very simply, reuse, arch dome, mortar, arabesque, maturity, Alai Darwaza. Anybody has any issue till stage 3? Come on. Please have to be more, at least a little bit more vocal right now, because as I said, a little bit of disruption. So I'm not sure if you are with me, and I'm trying to bring you to pace with regards to that. Okay. Now, let's talk about stage 4. And now come the Tughlaqs. Now, till Muhammad bin Tughlaq, there is money. And the Tughlaqs actually tell us, or in a way teach us, why we need to study architecture. Because Tughlaqs, there are 2 phases. Phase 1 and phase 2. In first phase, political and economic stability is reflected in the buildings. And the example of this would be, for example, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq tomb and Muhammad bin Tughlaq city. That is called Tughlaqabad and Adilabad. Tughlaqabad was made by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, as you remember, and Adilabad is within Tughlaqabad itself, which was made by Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Adilabad. Now, however, economic issues and political troubles start to get reflected in the buildings, and that testimony is later Tughlaq tombs and Firoz Shah Kotla. See, in phase 1, They make buildings such as this. This is phase 1, stage 4. They make buildings such as this, which is very beautiful buildings. It has two very interesting things: platform, and this is called barter or sloping walls. It's a show-off device. When you start to make your building sloping walls, it tends to show a certain type of grandeur. It's a totally show-off device. There's no purpose for this. The concept of barter, which we use, this whole concept of barter, which is sloping walls, is totally show-off. What you can see, one more thing, is marble dome. And over and above that, they also introduced a new concept, which is the concept of beam and lintel. Beam and lintel. This is the highest point of Delhi Sultanate architecture. And why do I say it? Because with the introduction or the making of these three very big cities, Tughlaqabad, Jahanpana, Firozabad, Adilabad, they were able to introduce dome with marble, which is a very interesting thing because marble is heavy. Your dome needs to be very, very strong to take heavy marble. You are making a sloping wall just as a feature of giving strength and solidity, but just a show-off device. But the problem is that whilst doing that, they were also introducing a concept of beam lintel. I'll tell you what is a beam lintel. When you make a wall, you put a beam on the top. You would for sure have a beam in your room right now. If not, it would have been blended with the wall itself. Your room right now has a skeleton. Your room right now, it would have something like this. The room would have been made with one column like this, and one column like this. This is the way there would be columns, and then they would be connected through beams. And that was now, it's the skeleton of the room. This is a standard thing. However, if I want to make a window in a wall, I put a lintel. Lintel is basically a little bit of concrete which is put in so that it can take the weight, and now I can make a window. In it. So beam and lintel technology, the concept of beam and lintel, which you can see here. Beam is the skeleton, lintel is for making. This is the beam, this is the lintel. So very simply, beam and lintel concept is introduced by Tughlaqs in that regard. So beam, lintel, and focus on strength and decoration. By the time we come to phase 2 of stage 4, now Muhammad bin Tughlaq has wasted the money in shifting the capital, token currencies, messed up everything. Now very simply, does this building, this is Muhammad bin Tughlaq's tomb, and this is the later Tughlaqs. Do these buildings actually even look comparable to what we saw previously? No. This is the declining phase. This is why we study architecture, because architecture is testimony to political economic stability. They now started to reuse these bricks. They did not have money for red and yellow sandstone, so they now started to use grey sandstone. And the problem with grey sandstone is that you cannot carve on it. Literally ugly buildings will start to develop, though they have the right technique for making dome, arch, everything. But I'll still ask you one small thing. What is this? Lotus. Which means that still one Hindu motif they will be obsessed by is the lotus, and they will add it to every building in that regard. So by the time we come to Firoz Shah Tughlaq, which is phase 4, full decline, we will get ugly, such a bad quality of material that his Firoz Shah Kotla used to look like a ghost town. Bad barter will not be there, recycling on stone will be there. Firoz Shah Kotla will have a standard basic decorative patterns as the lotus and all, but the buildings will have no architectural merit. I told you that he brought in one of the modern pillars. This is how it has been on the Firoz Shah Kotla itself. So very simply, it is in the Tughlaqs itself we can see a decline from this to this to this. Are you able to correlate what I'm trying to say? The visible decline which comes through and is reflected in the political economic, but also in the architectural in that regard. Yes. So let's do one thing. We've now discussed phase 4 also and the 2 phases in it. Can I consolidate Delhi Sultanate in one slide, which can be then written as an answer in the examination? But before I do that, are the images helping? Is it making sense? It's a little bit technical, but it is something which you need to know. Are you having a better understanding of what we are doing right now? Yes. Because problem in Nitin Singhania is he discusses all of these things, but he has no images. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a summary of what we call as Delhi Sultan's contribution to Indian architecture. So here, first, true arch, true dome, limestone mortar, arabesque, geometrical patterns plus Hindu motifs plus Kufi. Fifth, beam lintel technology. Sixth, accurate buildings. Seventh, barter, sloping walls, marble dome, right? Open pillarless buildings. In the examination, make an arch and make a dome so that it looks nice also. Make a dome. And generally, if I write these 9 points, my answer is done. I've just given you the basic points, write it with the basic English. Anybody has any issue in these 9 things? Anything which you don't understand? Because I'll give you the summary of the stages also, and we can end Delhi Sultanate in that regard. It could have been ended half an hour before if it was not for the disruption. All these can be written in yesterday's question. Yes, Neha, that is the basic point. So in a way, if you look at it, it's an art and culture question. If you can write any of this, and all of this is new technological development in that regard. So yes, that is true. Totally true. So 1 to 9. Anybody has any issue? Have to be more vocal. Have to be more clear. Come on. Squinch I'm not writing because squinch is a very, very technical term which the examiner would not expect you to know. But I've told you that. Anybody? No issue. Okay. Now let's talk about evolution of architecture during Delhi Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate. So you have stage 1, reuse and rebuilding phase, Qutub Uddin Aibak. Stage 2, introduction of true arch, true dome, squinch, mortar and arabesque. Thereafter, stage 3, maturity of all the above technologies. And stage 4, which is divided into 2 phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase A, phase 2B. This is high point of Delhi Sultanate architecture, declining phase, full decline. This is from Iltutmish till Jalaluddin Khilji. This is Alauddin Khilji. This is Ghiyasuddin and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. And this is Firoz later Tughlaqs. Anybody has any issue in what I've written? Anybody? No? Come on. These two are the summary of what we've done since the morning. Perfect? Because I'll give you a breather here, 5-minute breather I'll give you, so that you consolidate this, and then we go to Lodhis and I will introduce Mughals to you, because it will become heavy too much if I go till one straight. Can I give you a 5-minute break and you consolidate this? Okay? Okay. This is clear. So we'll come back at 12:27 and we'll go till 1, then that is a lunch break, and we'll then move to Mughal India. See you. In between this, no. Okay, welcome back. Now, can anybody tell me why are we moving straight from Tughlaq's Delhi Sultanate to Lodhis? Can anybody tell me why? In between the Sayyids come, but why are we not discussing the Sayyids? No, it's not that. No, they're not part of the Delhi Sultanate. The reason is there's a correlation between political stability and architecture. Was the Sayyids very, very politically stable between 1414 to 1450? No, and that is reflected in the fact that there is no major significant contribution by them because of the fact that they were extremely politically unstable. So between 1414 to 1450, no significant change or contribution. Now, by the time the Lodhis rise in 1450, what is already decided? True arch, true dome, arabesque, plus the concept of lintel and Indo-Islamic cultural amalgamation, mortar. All of these things have already been, in a way, they all have matured. But the Lodhis, whose contribution is in the Lodhi garden, or the Lodhi gardens, where all three, be it Bahlul, be it Sikandar, or be it Ibrahim, all these three Lodhis are buried. And their tombs represent a very important change. I hope you understand what is a tomb. Tomb is not an issue, right? Somebody sitting there asking or Googling what is tomb. What is a tomb? What is a tomb? Where they're buried. Makabra, mausoleum, tomb. These are the different synonyms. So represent a new change and is. And why are the Lodhis very important? In a way, Lodhis are the foundation of Mughal architecture. And the reason for that is, I will mark 3 to 4 things and you will automatically realize it. This seems familiar. What is this? This is called inverted lotus on dome, or the concept of inverted lotus. Where have we seen a previously inverted lotus? Where have we seen inverted lotus previously? Very good. In the morning pillars. And this has now become a feature that the dome will always be topped by an inverted lotus. Thereafter, they will introduce a new concept which they picked up from, again, the Rajasthan and Gujarat sector. Inverted lotus, and this is called ecaves or ecaves. This is the word. It's called ecave. Ecave. Ecaves are very small protrusions. I'll show it to you in a more graphical way. Ecaves are like this. Small, something like this. Small, very small. They are topped by, they are added to a building to give a little bit of what we call as good finish. It's an aesthetic device itself. And what the Lodhis did was, they were also able to introduce double dome. Double dome. What do you mean by double dome? This is called an ecave or ecave. Double dome, the Lodhi contribution. One ecave, second inverted lotus. And they were able to do one more thing, which is called double dome. See, if I have a very high ceiling, what happens to my sound inside that room? If I have a very, very high ceiling, 50, 60 meter high ceiling, if I have, it will have echo, it will have, there will be gunjna, that there will be echoing of the sound itself. So the Lodhis did not like that. So what they used to do was, when they used to make their buildings, rather than having one very, very high dome, they used to make double domes, which is that they used to make a very big dome. Very big dome. But the problem of this is that the ceiling is very, very high. So there will be echoing. So what they used to do, they used to add a false, smaller dome inside it. So they used to have one dome inside another dome. This is called double dome structure. This area is empty. This is hollow area. Hollow. So now you have basically two ceilings. You have two ceilings. One is this A and the other one is B. And the distance between B minus A is nothing but the double dome concept. Double domes need a lot of precision and they take it to a next level altogether. Now, what is more interesting about these features? This was prevalent in Rajasthan and Gujarat. This was prevalent in Gujarat and Rajasthan. These two are basically Rajasthani Gujarati features, which the Afghans or the Lodhis picked up on. And now you see that very simply, these features will become more and more common. But the most truly indigenous feature, which Akbar will become obsessed of, is called the Chhatri, or what we call as kiosk. And you would have seen it for sure in your life. This is called the Rajasthani Gujarati Chhatri. Have you seen something like this? This is called a chhatri or a kiosk. This will become a common feature. And this was also a Rajasthani Gujarati thing. So when you look at Lodhi buildings, the Lodhis further took the concept further, which is arch, lintel, beam, and structures. Balconies, kiosk, caves became very, very common, which were actually Rajasthani Gujarati influence. Double dome structures and taking everything on a high platform was also very common. The Lodhi Gardens is the specimen of what the Mughals will take further. So for us, these are four features, plus what we call as Rajasthani balcony. I will also show you that and make that for you. Have you seen a balcony like this? Jarokha, yes, Jarokha. This is called a Rajasthani balcony. This was also integrated by the Lodhis. Very simply, by adding these five features, what have the Lodhis done? What have the Lodhis done? Come on. Further cultural amalgamation. More than that, they have now made Islamic architecture more indigenous, more Rajasthani Gujarati than actually their own designs. So when we talk about Delhi Sultans lay the foundation of Indo-Islamic architecture by true arch, true dome, mortar, arabesque, beam lintel. But here, the Turkish elements are more, and there's a beginning of a certain type of what we call as cultural interaction and amalgamation. However, when we come to the Lodhis make architecture truly Indo-Islamic. Why? Because what they do is that from Rajasthani, Gujarati architecture, or what we call as Rajput designs, they add kiosk, chhatri, caves, Rajasthani balcony, and the inverted lotus. Inverted lotus. Further, they are able to make the dome double dome. And when Babur comes to India by 1526, by 16th century, architecture in India had already become a cultural amalgamation of all of these things. From two arch to two dome to limestone mortar to sloping wall to intricate designs to Indo-Islamic architecture, to kiosk to chhatri to balcony to caves to lotus to double dome. When the Mughals come, this is already a standard practice in India. And if, for example, sandstone was used, not very heavy sandstone, red and yellow sandstone can only come from Rajasthan. Rana Sanga controlled that. So, if there's a question in the examination, what is contribution of Delhi Sultans or Lodhis to architecture or evolution between 13th to 16th century? Are you in a position of writing it? Come on, tell me. Are you in a position of writing it? See, these things are not that easy as I'm showing it in Nitin Singhania, very bad section. Somehow he's mixed it up, he's fully messed it up. So I'm very systematically showing you the evolution of medieval architecture. We have reached till the Mughals. Anybody has any question, anything you want to ask me, right now ask me, because in Mughal, I will presume that you know all of these things in that regard. Anybody? Is this making sense? Is this more systematic? Are you understanding how and why do I call it Indo-Islamic? And are you able to understand the politics behind calling it Islamic? And what is the reason why we call it Indo-Islamic? Are you getting my point? You want to see a cave? A cave, I'll show it to you. See, a cave. A cave. This is a chhatri. Chhatri. A cave, chhatri. Right? Yeah. Manju. Akbar will go mad with caves and chhatris. He will become chhatri fan for some reason. Okay. When I ask doubt from medieval India, what is the doubt from medieval India? Please do. Anybody else? Because most probably I'll introduce Mughal architecture to you, but I will do it after the break. So we've had a disrupted session. I'm really sorry about that, but at least everybody should be able to take away this out of it. So, are we clear with regards to Delhi Sultanate and Lodi architecture? And anybody has any issue with regards to how, whatever question will come, either contribution of Delhi Sultans will come, or Lodis will come, or they'll give you period 13th century to 16th century. 13th century to 16th century, whatever happened in the Indian subcontinent is in front of you right now. Anybody, any issue? Abhinav, ask your question. I'm waiting for it. Yes, no, I have to say something. Abhinav's question is, on the other day I was reading Satish Chandra and in that it was written Jodha Bai was not the wife of Akbar but Jahangir. Is it true? You want the right answer or you want the popular answer? Which one do you want? The right answer. Satish Chandra is right. There's a person called Colonel Todd. Harka Bai, who's the wife of Akbar, and Jodha Bai are two different women. But a British officer, again a British issue, he showed Harka Bai and Jodha Bai as the same. Jodha Bai was actually the wife of Salim, which is Jahangir, and Harka Bai was the wife of Akbar. But now, unfortunately, in popular imagination, Jodha Akbar is something which is always associated with each other. That whole movie is based not on husband-wife, but actually father-in-law and daughter-in-law. But in popular imagination, Jodha Bai is seen as the wife of Akbar. But that is technically not true. That is technically not true. That is a British created confusion. The British did it by calling Mughals, Timurs as Mongols. They also, that Colonel Todd who wrote the history of Jodha Bai actually messed up Jodha Bai and Harka Bai together. The mother of Jahangir is Harka Bai, and Jodha Bai is the wife of Jahangir or Salim. And that is what he messed it up. Yeah. Not the right answer, but in the examination, don't write that. The popular answer is the right answer. Sir, the Lodhis already had basic architectural features and the majority developed through Indo-Islamic buildings with other. Yes. So, Mr. In a way, the point is that Lodhis already saw that there is Turkish architecture, Islamic architecture is settled. So now they wanted to go a step further. And Daulat Khan Lodi and Rana Sanga and the Rajasthan sector was having a lot of interaction. So the Lodhis, Afghans had Bengal also and Rajasthan also under their purview in a little bit and a lot of interaction. So they picked up. They wanted to go a step further, and that we did through that. On this very issue, I will mail you. Prabhu, I will not entertain an email about Jodha and Akbar because I'm not going to make a movie about them. I really don't care about it. So you email me, I will give you a very standard answer like this only. I'm not the one who called Harka Bai and Jodha Bai same. And very simply, it is of no purpose for the examination. I don't care. Yes, Jodha is the wife of Akbar as per popular imagination. So on this very issue, if you want to support it or contest it. What do you want to do? Prabhu, what do you want to do? You want to support it or contest it? You remove all air. I didn't get it. See, Satish Chandra is a specialist on this. When Jodha Akbar movie came out, Satish Chandra wrote a letter to the director also. But he said that it's a cultural adaptation, it's a work of fiction, so it doesn't really matter. It takes 4 to 5 days. Okay. Does anybody have issue with architecture because we are talking about something else? So which means that architecture is totally fine. Samita, you got your answer, right? Yes, sir. Okay. Anybody? No, can I move on? Can I introduce Mughal architecture to you? Little silent. Lunchtime is coming. Don't worry. I thought that I'll take half an hour out of lunchtime, but then you will eat me. So there's no point. So that is why I'll just introduce this to you. 1 to 2 will take a break. Then why Indian government allowed this type of movie to release? One cares. It's a work of fiction. It's in that movie I can point out 50 to 60 mistakes just by looking at the scenes. But how does it matter? That's the point. We have to clear the examination. I will become an IAS officer, then I will not even care if Mughal architecture exists or not. Get the point. Don't become a constitutional lawyer, a historian, an economist. You have to clear the examination. Let the government do what it is doing. Let the UPSC do what it is doing. Clear the exam. And then I would love to hear what the government is doing. My task is to make you clear the examination. A certain type of emotion comes through, but emotional answers are not what the UPSC is expecting. Okay. How history accounted? Prabhu, be more specific. I'm understanding the emotion of the question. I need your specific question. How is history written? That is what you're trying to write. Yes, Ashish. Once you clear the examination, I will tell you why the government is allowing certain movies or not certain movies. Right? Right? You become an IAS officer. That is my achievement. Okay. How is history written? History written through sources. Sources can be archaeological, literary. British wrote a certain type of accounts. There is what we call as indigenous accounts. We have texts. We have personalities who written it. We have monuments in themselves. So history is written by sources. A historian doesn't make up any things. He writes what he sees in sources. So as a historian, for the past one decade, I wrote my MPhil not on random sources or on my own version of what I wanted to write. I went to the archive. I sat in Mumbai. I sat in Goa. I went to Portuguese sources. I went to British documents, and then came up with an argument. So it's not a random thing. And there is always a difference between what we call as popular imagination and academic history. There will always be a difference, because what popular imagination is the interpretation of history. My task is to write history. Your task is how you interpret it. Because my whole MPhil technically argues very simply that we tend to say that all innovations in administrative sphere were done by the British. But what is ironic is that if you will actually study Portuguese and what we call as British history together, Portuguese were for 400 years, they were for 220, if you want to call it 2 centuries, 200 years. The British picked up a lot of things from the Portuguese, but nobody talks about that. Which is for insularity, that you give insularity to the British, that everything what they did was their own. But what I argue has no space in the popular imagination. Academic sphere, we complicate things, we have nuance. These are two very different things in that regard. So understand this point. What a ISRO scientist is doing, you only see Chandrayaan 3. But what is behind Chandrayaan 3 is a whole story which you don't even know about. So much like a scientist, much like what a professional does, an architect does a lot of things. You only see the building. So in the same way, history, what you see in standard, what you see in popular imagination, and what you see in academia are two different things in that regard. Okay. Now, we have discussed Delhi Sultans. We have discussed Lodhis. And you want to watch the movie Napoleon, Hardeep, sure. Most probably will also have inaccuracies. But from a French perspective, it is written, so it will mostly turn out to be very eulogical, what we call as celebratory of Napoleon. Because in French imagination, as I will be talking about on Monday and Tuesday, in French imagination, Napoleon is a hero. In British imagination, he's Napoleon, he's belittled, that he's short, and he's shown in very bad light. So it's about who writes that history. So if you want to watch the movie Napoleon, sure, but it's French, so you have to watch it, the dubbed one, and it will be very celebratory of Napoleon. So we have Delhi Sultans, we have Lodhis, and thereafter come the Mughals. Now, when we talk about Mughals, Mughals are considered the highest point of Indo-Islamic architecture. And in this story, very simply, we will have multiple actors. So Babur has no real contribution. He made 2 mosques, one at the Panipat sector and the other one at Sambhal. No real contribution. Very ugly mosque he made. This is the Panipat one. Panipat. As you can see, arch is there, dome is there, but very bland. Nothing really that way. So his contribution was more towards his memoirs. He wrote the Baburnama. He talked about a lot of things. So in the Indian subcontinent, he did not leave a lot when it came to architecture. But he introduced a concept called Charbagh. Charbagh, coming from the very rugged terrain of Samarkand, of Fargana and all. He loved greenery. And that is why he, in Kabul, when he was sitting in Kabul, he developed what is called Charbagh. Charbagh, the name itself tells you, is 4 quadrants. If I take his Kabul Charbagh, I can divide it into 4 parts. Charbagh concept was introduced by Babur, and this will become a staple in the things which will develop further. He used to use also a lot of water. Waterworks was also very common. Understand the fact that the Timurids are coming from a very dry area. So for them, water and greenery is something very revered in that regard. So that way, Babur's contribution in our story is nothing but and not more than just the Charbagh concept, which is what we call as garden complex. However, this is again not unique, because Lodhis had an understanding of what we call as gardens, because Lodhis developed a garden complex around their tombs. But the concept of Char, which is 4, Charbagh, is something which is specific to Babur. Hold on to this information, because you will realize that somehow every Mughal Sultan, every Mughal emperor adds a feature, and all culminate in Taj Mahal. When we talk about Humayun, and this is the last point I will make before we go for the break. When we talk about Humayun himself again did not make anything except for the Purana Qila, which was again Sher Shah played with it quite a lot. You have the Kuwaitul Islam Mosque, which is there in the end of the Purana Qila itself. But can anybody tell me why Humayun was not able to make a lot of things in India, or his contribution again is just random mosques which are there in certain areas, which is that he also had in Agra and Fatehabad, Hisar, he had 2 standard mosques which he made, but with no architectural merit and nothing generally. Why was Humayun not able to make a lot of things? Yes, very good, which is very, very unstable empire, fighting with Sher Shah Suri as it is, and 6 months he will die. However, his widow, and this is the point we will discuss when we come back, his widow, Hamida Banu Begum, will develop and will go basically to Persia, because they were coming from the Safavid Empire. 6 months had just happened. She will employ a Persian architect named Mirak Mirza Ghias, and Akbar, who was just a child at this point of time, Akbar, Bairam Khan, and Hamida Banu Begum, with the money which was now coming from the Doab region, and with the expertise of Mirak Mirza Ghias, they will develop, after the death of Humayun, the Humayun's tomb. This tomb is the starting point of a very interesting history of how Persian plus Indian plus Islamic architecture came through and became what it was. And this is what we will discuss when we are back. We will start with Humayun's tomb. Humayun's tomb somehow is equally, and in a way is in certain aspects better than the Taj Mahal, but is like the starting point of a story which Akbar will take to a different level altogether, and Shah Jahan will culminate with by the Taj Mahal itself. But the point of the matter is, before I go, very simply, three things. Are we clear with regards to Delhi Sultans, Lodhis, and Babar Charbagh? Are we clear with regards to these things? Because when I come back, I will presume that you understand what is written on this slide fully. If you do, then we can take a break and go for lunch and come back and take this story forward and finish architecture. Yes? Great, perfect. So we'll come back at 2:10. I've taken 5 minutes. I'm giving you 5 minutes. We'll come back at 2:10 and we will go till 5 p.m. and finish architecture in all aspects. So I'll see you at 2:10. Have a good lunch. Thank you. And let's meet at 2:10 and finish architecture, the longest section of your syllabus in that regard. Thank you. See you at 2. Good morning. I'm audible and visible. Good morning. Indian government allowed this type of movie to release. One cares. It's a work of fiction. It's in that movie I can point out 50 to 60 mistakes just by looking at the scenes. But how does it matter? That's the point. We have to clear the examination. I will become an IS officer, then I will not even care if Mughal architecture exists or not. Get the point. Don't become a constitutional lawyer, a historian, a economist. You have to clear the examination. Let the government do what it is doing. Let the UPSC do what it is doing. Clear the exam, and then I would love to hear what the government is doing. My task is to make you clear the examination. A certain type of emotion comes through, but emotional answers are not what the UPSC is expecting. Okay. How history accounted? Prabhu, be more specific. I'm understanding the emotion of the question. I need your specific question. How is history written? That is what you're trying to write. Yes, Ashish. Once you clear the examination, I will tell you why the government is allowing certain movies or not certain movies. Right? Right? You become an IS officer. That is my achievement. Okay. How is history written? History written through sources. Sources can be archaeological, literary. British wrote a certain type of accounts. There is what we call as indigenous accounts. We have texts. We have personalities who written it. We have monuments in themselves. So history is written by sources. A historian doesn't make up any things. He writes what he sees in sources. So as a historian for the past one decade, I wrote my MPhil not on random sources or on my own version of what I wanted to write. I went to the archive. I sat in Mumbai. I sat in Goa. I went to Portuguese sources. I went to British documents and then came up with an argument. So it's not a random thing. And there is always a difference between what we call as popular imagination and academic history. There will always be a difference because what popular imagination is the interpretation of history. My task is to write history. Your task is how you interpret it. Because my whole MPhil technically argues very simply that we tend to say that all innovations in administrative sphere were done by the British. But what is ironic is that if you will actually study Portuguese and what we call as British history together, Portuguese were here for 400 years, they were for 220, if you want to call it 2 centuries, 200 years. The British picked up a lot of things from the Portuguese, but nobody talks about that. But it's called insularity, that you give insularity to the British, that everything what they did was their own. But what I argue has no space in the popular imagination. Academic sphere, we complicate things, we have nuance. These are two very different things in that regard. So understand this point. What a ISRO scientist is doing, you only see Chandrayaan 3. But what is behind Chandrayaan 3 is a whole story which you don't even know about. So much like a scientist, much like what a professional does, an architect does a lot of things. You only see the building. So in the same way, history, what you see in standard, what you see in popular imagination, and what you see in academics are two different things in that regard. Okay. Now, we have discussed Delhi Sultans. We've discussed Lodhis. And you want to watch the movie Napoleon Hardeep, sure. Most probably will also have inaccuracies. But from a French perspective, it is written, so it will mostly turn out to be very eulogical, what we call as a celebratory of Napoleon. Because in French imagination, as I will be talking about on Monday and Tuesday, in French imagination, Napoleon is a hero. In British imagination, he's Napoleon, he's belittled, that he's short, and he's shown in very bad light. So it's about who writes that history. So if you want to watch the movie Napoleon, sure, but it's French, so you have to watch it the dubbed one, and it will be very celebratory of Napoleon. So we have Delhi Sultans, we have Lodhis, and thereafter come the Mughals. Now, when we talk about Mughals, Mughals are considered the highest point of Indo-Islamic architecture. And in this story, very simply, we will have multiple actors. So Babur has no real contribution. He made 2 mosques, one at the Panipat sector and the other one at Ramhal. No real contribution, very ugly mosque he made. This is the Panipat one. Panipat. As you can see, arch is there, dome is there, but very bland, nothing really that way. So his contribution was more towards his memoirs. He wrote the Baburnama, he talked about a lot of things. So in the Indian subcontinent, he did not leave a lot when it came to architecture. But he introduced a concept called Charbagh. Charbagh. He coming from the very rugged terrain of Samarkand, of Fardana and all. He loved greenery. And that is why he, in Kabul, when he was sitting in Kabul, he developed what is called Charbagh. Charbagh, the name itself tells you, is 4 quadrants. If I take his Kabul Charbagh, I can divide it into 4 parts. Charbagh concept was introduced by Babur, and this will become a staple in the things which will develop further. He used to use also a lot of water. Water was also very common. Understand the fact that the Timurids are coming from a very dry area. So for them, water and greenery is something very revered in that area. So that ways, Babur's contribution in our story is nothing but and not more than just the Charbagh concept, which is what we call as garden complex. However, this is again not unique because Lodhis had an understanding of what we call as gardens, because Lodhis developed a garden complex around their tombs. But the concept of Char, which is 4, Charbagh, is something which is specific to Babur. Hold on to this information because you will realize that somehow every Mughal Sultan, every Mughal emperor adds a feature and all culminate in Taj Mahal. All culminate in Taj Mahal. When we talk about Humayun, and this is the last point I will make before we go for the break. When we talk about Humayun, Humayun himself again did not make anything except for the Purana Qila, which was again Sher Shah played with it quite a lot. You have the Kuwaitul Islam Mosque, which is there in the end of the Purana Qila itself. But can anybody tell me why Humayun was not able to make a lot of things in India, or his contribution again is just random mosques which are there in certain areas, which is that he also had in Agra and Fatehabad, Hisar, he had 2 standard mosques which he made, but with no architectural merit and nothing generally. Why? Why was Humayun not able to make a lot of things? Yes, very good, which is very, very unstable empire, fighting with Sher Shah Suri as it is, and 6 months he will die. However, his widow, and this is the point we will discuss when we come back, his widow, Hamida Banu Begum, will develop and will go basically to Persia because they were coming from the Safavid Empire. 6 months had just happened. She will employ a Persian architect named Mirak Mirza Ghias and Akbar, who was just a child at this point of time. Akbar, Bairam Khan, and Hamida Banu Begum, with the money which was now coming from the Doab region, and with the expertise of Mirak Mirza Ghias, they will develop after the death of Humayun, the Humayun's tomb. The Humayun's tomb. This tomb is the starting point of a very interesting history of how Persian plus Indian plus Islamic architecture came through and became what it was. And this is what we will discuss when we are back. We will start with Humayun's tomb. Humayun's tomb somehow is equally and in a way is in certain aspects better than the Taj Mahal, but is like the starting point of a story which Akbar will take to a different level altogether, and Shah Jahan will culminate with by the Taj Mahal itself. But the point of the matter is, before I go, very simply, 3 things. Are we clear with regards to Delhi Sultans, Lodhis, and Babur Charbagh? Are we clear with regards to these things? Because when I come back, I will presume that you understand what is written on this slide fully. If you do, then we can take a break and go for lunch and come back and take this story forward and finish architecture. Yes? Great, perfect. So we'll come back at 2:10. I've taken 5 minutes. I'm giving you 5 minutes. We'll come back at 2:10 and we will go till 5 p.m. and finish architecture in all aspects. So I'll see you at 2:10. Have a good lunch. Thank you. And let's meet at 2:10 and finish architecture, the longest section of your syllabus in that regard. Thank you. See you at 2.